Hi, everybody. Welcome into Midwest Racing Central today. Pete Pistone here at MidwestRacingCentral.com. And let's talk some short track racing and bring in a guy who's got a lot of experience in the short track world. He's also the communications director for the ARCA series, Charlie Krall, with us here at Midwest Racing Central today. Charlie, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate it very much. So I get this question a lot. Let's start with this. They say, "Hey, Pete, how do you do all the things you do? I get to work at Sirius XM. I get to do this stuff here. I get to do college sports. You are everywhere. How do you kind of balance what you do with ARCA, the short track world, and all the things that are on your plate every week?"
Well, I'll tell you what. First and foremost, I have a boss and a group of people that I work for and work with that are very in tune to the racing world themselves, and being in touch with what's going on in the short track world, whether it's the ASA Stars National Tour or whether it's some of the local short track stuff that I get to go off and do, that really only helps what we're doing here as we try to build that ladder system for these young drivers to come up and through. The biggest challenge is finding the time, as you know,
Yeah.
to do this all. There's only so many days and so many weekends in the year, and you still would like to have some quiet time of your own to maybe hang out with your children and spend a little time with the wife. But it all tends to work itself out. Having kids that are really big fans of racing of all sorts, and having a wife that was involved in racing as a team owner herself. A decade ago, they all understand it and they get it, and it makes it a lot easier to juggle all of these various balls we have in the air.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Let's start on the ARCA side, and I want to start a little closer to home. What's going to be up? The ARCA East Series is going to be at Hickory Motor Speedway for the first time in a couple of weeks. There's some new names on the entry list there. Tell us about that event coming down the pike there, and about how excited you are to have ARCA at a historic track like Hickory.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, going to Hickory Motor Speedway for the first time with the ARCA Menards East is going to be fantastic. I went to Hickory for the first time as a spectator for the old Bobby Isaac Memorial Busch Series race back in 1986 with my grandparents, and what a neat racetrack. And going back there the last couple of years with the ASA Stars National Tour, it's like stepping back in time. That racetrack. Well, while they have obviously have kept it up. The racetrack itself is exactly the same as I remember it from back in the day. Looking at our tentative entry list, we've got, as it stands right now, 25 drivers entered, and we're still, a week away. So I think it's going to be a terrific entry list. I know the racetrack has sold a gob of tickets already in advance of this. One name that I'm really interested in seeing how he's going to do. We all are very fond of Cletus McFarland. Garrett Mitchell come into the races. Squirrel McNutt, his little right hand man there. George Siciliano is going to make his ARCA East debut. I know the plan for them is they'd like George to come in and run this race at Hickory, get approved to then go and run the race at Kansas, to then go and get approved to run Talladega with Cletus. So we'll see how that goes. I know Rhett Jones Racing has prepared the car for George, and he's very excited to come and do it. And he doesn't have a lot of actual like late model racing experience, but the stuff that he and Cletus do with those cars and those Crown Vics that they take all over the place, I think he's going to do just fine.
So for some of our listeners who maybe don't understand ARCA East, ARCA West, ARCA Menard series, why don't you just explain kind of the hierarchy and how those two divisions support the main national series, Charlie?
So the ARCA Menards East and ARCA Menards West all have very long histories of their own, despite the fact that ARCA has only sanctioned them since 2020. What is now the ARCA Menards East used to be the old K&N Pro Series East. Got its start when it was known back in 1987 as the NASCAR Busch North Series. So that history dates back to 1987. Out west, what is now the ARCA Menards West, it used to be the old NASCAR Winston West Series that dates back to 1954. So while the name has changed, we haven't done anything to change that history. The cars are still very similar to what they were prior to the NASCAR merger that put everything together. But how we have kind of envisioned those two series to be, while we still have them as a standalone series championship. And someone like Trevor Huddleston, who is not a 15-year-old. We see those as a way for some of these young drivers to get their feet in the door and to come and race for a championship before they're eligible to come and run, on the big tracks like the Daytonas and the Talladegas and the Michigans and the Chicagoland Speedways of the world. Being 15 years of age, like let's just say Brent Cruz was a couple of years ago. Brent was not eligible to come and run for the ARCA Menard Series Championship. He could have gone and run for a championship in the ARCA East or West. And that's exactly what Jesse Love did. Jesse Love was a two-time ARCA West champion by the time he was 16 years old. And then when he was old enough to come and compete in the ARCA Menard Series, the National ARCA Menard Series Tour, that's exactly what he even came and win a championship there too. So it's all part of that feeder program, that kind of bridges that gap between the regional touring series like the Cars Tour or the ASA National Tour, and it drives people into the NASCAR National Series, the trucks, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and then the Cup Series.
Which brings you to the ARCA Menards National Series. I mean, I saw you in Daytona in February, and one of the things that I always loved about this series from day one was the versatility of the series. You go to every kind of racetrack under the sun, including here in the Midwest. We'll see you at Berlin, we'll see you at Madison, we'll see you at some of the tracks here in the Midwest. How is that balance in between putting that schedule together, Charlie, and having representation at some of those traditional short tracks, but be on super speedways, dirt tracks, and everything else you do at the Menard Series?
Well, I'll tell you what, that formula kind of was put in place in the early 1980s when John Markham died in May of 1981. A lot of people don't know this part of the story, but the France family actually kind of helped guide ARCA back in those very troubling days for this company. Big Bill France and then Bill France Jr. Went to bat for the ARCA, what was then the Talladega Supercar Series, and went to places like Atlanta and Pocono and even Michigan and some of those other racetracks and said, hey, we would like for this series to stay afloat and it needs dates. And we added dates at Talladega, and we our long established date there at Daytona that goes back to 1963. And added dates at Pocono and Atlanta. And we found that the balance between some of those Southeastern super speedways and the Midwestern short tracks worked really, really well. At that time, it was a very heavily Midwestern series with a lot of the drivers and teams from your neck of the woods, a lot of those folks from Chicagoland area, Lombard, Illinois, and whatnot. They really wanted to stay and race those Midwestern short tracks, but they really liked the opportunity to go down and race at Daytona and Talladega and Atlanta and Charlotte and whatnot. So it's a balance that we have really tried very hard to keep over the last 20 years. And now that we have this partnership with Menards, part of our contract is, Menards wants to have those races where their stores are. So we try to keep as many of them up here in the Midwest as we can.
I look forward to that coming up this summer. Charlie Krall's with us here on Midwest Racing Central today. Now let's shift gears and just talk a little bit more about the other part of your world, short tracks, late models. You do good work there, as you mentioned, with the ASA Stars National Tour. So we had Daniel Hemrick on my NASCAR show this week on Sirius XM, and I asked him what's he doing outside of the trucks. And he said, I'm building a late model. And I said, Daniel, you're going to have to be a little more specific than building a late model. Is it a super late model? Is it a car store late model? Is it a two-barrel carburetor late model? He sort of laughed. In terms of that world, where are we right now? I know a lot of tracks here in my part of the country have tried to get a universal set of rules. I don't know how successful that's been, but how do you think that is in pavement late model racing right now, Charlie, in your mind?
Well, I will tell you, I think it's a little stronger than it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I think there is still a level of confusion, as you just said, to what a late model is. You talk to someone in the Charlotte area, a late model is a late model stock car. And you and I up in our neck of the woods, a late model stock car would be like a sportsman type car. When we hear late model, it's super late model. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that the nomenclature is a little confusing from time to time. I really wish we could figure out a way to separate some of that confusion a little bit. We have seen on the ASA Star side of things, we've seen a pretty steady growth in car counts. From the upper teens now, I think we're going to be solidly into the maybe the mid 20s at most of these races, which is a very good thing. Um, Marty Mello and the MDM Productions group that have taken over the ASA tours from Bob Sargent and Track Enterprises work really hard on putting the sponsorship programs in place that will allow these teams to come and race for the type of money that they should be coming and racing for at some of these events. So and the teams have responded in kind by coming and entering these races. um, I think we're in a really good spot, Pete. I don't think we're where we need to be with this. I mean, you and I remember the glory days of the old ASA tour back in the mid to late 1990s when we had 50 and 60 cars come to some of these races. Boy, it would be great if we could get back to even having 35 cars at some of these races. But I think that it's for a series that is now just a handful of years old, I think the ASA Stars National Tour is probably right where it needs to be for now, but there's still plenty of room for growth in the future.
Well, and then obviously the umbrella under that, closer to home to me, is the Midwest Tour, which is obviously sort of finds its
Yeah.
roots in the old ARCO series back in the day with John McCarnes. And again, you talk about the glory days. I mean, in those days, we'd see an ARCO race on a Tuesday, and then those guys could take that same race car and go to La Crosse on Wednesday, and Kaukauna on Thursday, and Madison on Friday, and
Right.
Adele's on Saturday, and Slinger on Sunday with the same exact race car. I'd like to get a little closer to that. I don't think we ever will, but I want to ask you about that part of it as well. What the Midwest Tour and the CRA series does, and the Southern Super Series, kind of the same idea, kind of what we talked about with ARCA, under the umbrella of the ASA Stars National Tour. How do you think that's working out, Charlie?
Well, I particularly for the Midwest Tour, I think it's working really well. Midwest Tour is still very, very strong. They're getting tremendous car counts up there. Greg McCarnes, following that line from the old Arco day. Greg is still very involved there and has done a really great job. With the rules up there and built a very solid foundation. It's none of this is cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it's that rules package is not as expensive as some of the others, and it allows racers to come out and compete without breaking the bank, so to speak. Some of the other tours, particularly the CRA Super Series, which I can trace that, though, that series roots back to the mid 1990s as the old Indiana late model series. um, you know I think that's struggling a little more to get some of those drivers to come on a non ASA combination race, so to speak. Um, but again, I think having that foundation in place is what's really important, in having some of those traditional races like the race here at Toledo Speedway. And some of these are combination races with the national ASA tour, but having some of those races in place, and having a place that these guys can come and race these cars. They still want to come and do it. Midwest late model racing, particularly with the template body style cars, there's only a couple of places that do it on a regular basis right now, Pete. And I think we've got to find a way to rein those costs in a little bit more, and find a way to maybe pay those race drivers a little bit more. And again, it's not my money to spend in either case, but this is just what I'm hearing from the drivers and the teams that participate. It costs a lot to come and get these cars, and it costs a lot to get them up the road to get to the racetrack. And I think the teams would like to come and race for a little bit more money too. But I think, and again, I give Marty a lot of credit. He's out there shaking those trees really, really hard to try to get it so that the equation for these race teams is not so upside down these days.
No, I agree. The last point I want to make, and again, appreciate Charlie Krall being with us here on the podcast. You mentioned Toledo Speedway. I talked to track promoters here about their weekly programs and what they're trying to do, not with tours, but just every Friday or Saturday or Sunday night, in some cases, just to put that weekly show out there. And you know as well as I do, Charlie, that's getting harder and harder and harder. What are you hearing? The one thing that I have as a commonality when I speak to promoters is they talk about bringing families and kids to the racetrack, and they'll do anything to do that. What are you hearing on that end in terms of the weekly racing out there these days?
So my boss Ron Drager owns a couple of racetracks. He owns Flat Rock Speedway, the Saturday night, just south of Detroit quarter mile, and then he also owns Toledo Speedway here in Toledo, the big fast half mile. Flat Rock's still a weekly racetrack every Saturday night from late April through early September. It's the same program that they've run there since I was a kid. Late model street stocks and figure eights. And again, I mean, just like with anything in the motorsports world, it is kind of contracted a little bit. There, instead of having 28 late models, you might have 20, and instead of 20 figure eight cars, you might have 16. Still get a pretty decent crowd on Saturday nights, and a lot of those are the same families that have been coming there. I see a lot of the same faces that were there when I was a kid, as a matter of fact. On the Toledo Speedway side of things, it's a little bit more of a challenge. I think the bigger the racetrack is, the more expensive it can be to compete on. And if you have a bad day and you find yourself in an incident, it's really difficult to repair these race cars these days. Very expensive. So Toledo has kind of transformed from a weekly racetrack into a special events only racetrack. But events like ARCA Menard Series and USAC Silver Crown, we've got a twin bill for the Turn One CRA Pro Late Model Division and Wing Super Modifieds that we haven't had at Toledo Speedway in about 15 years. We've got a couple of Nights of Destruction with the school bus figure eights. We've got a 500 sprint car tour race with and that always brings a big crowd. There's a lot of open wheel fans in this neck of the woods. So a very diverse schedule. And I think that's what you need to do, particularly with these special events only racetracks. You need to have a very diverse schedule, and you got to bring the people things that they want to see. And I think over the years, Ron and the new general manager here, Brandon Hamby, have done a really good job of identifying exactly what it is that our fans want to see, and they're bringing them exactly those types of shows.
Yeah, I mean, I remember here the late great Rockford Speedway, my home track that went out of business a couple years ago. The figure eight trailer race was the one they were selling tickets for in April before anything else. Charlie.
Absolutely,
so you're right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was what people wanted to see. We would pack them in that night for sure. Listen, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, but thanks for being here. I know again you have a passion for short track racing like I do, and I look forward to seeing you this summer out and about here in the racing world. Thanks,
Hey,
Charlie.
man, anytime you want to come and hang out with us at one of our short track shows, Pete, we'd love to have you.
We'd love to do it. That's Charlie Krall. He is the communications director for ARCA. You also see him as part of the broadcast team for the ASA Stars National Tour and some other broadcasts from coast to coast. I'm Pete Pistone. Thanks for tuning in here at Midwest Racing Central today. And don't forget to check things out throughout the season and the week at MidwestRacingCentral.com.